Welcome to the Cash Car Convert Podcast, Episode 18.
You're listening to the Cash Car Convert Podcast with James Kinson.
Welcome to the Cash Car Convert Podcast. This is James Kinson, and I am the Cash Car Convert. This is the podcast where cash cars are cool and auto debt is dangerous to your financial future. Today is a special episode of the Cash Car Convert Podcast. I was interviewed recently by my friend Jim Munchbach, and Jim is a professor at the University of Houston, and he teaches a personal finance class. And he felt like that there was an area of that class that was missing, and that had to do with how to buy cars. So he asked me to come on his show, Social Business Authority, and be interviewed. And what's going to follow is that interview. So I hope you enjoy it.
Well, it's always good to have a guest on the show who does his own show. And James, I just turned on the recorder, so anything you say now can and will be used against you in the world of podcasting.
Well, they do say forewarned is forearmed, so I guess I'm armed.
You are forearmed, and you're also the Cash Car Convert, and that's how anybody who wants to reach you can reach you on Twitter at the @ Cash Car Convert.
That's it. Absolutely right.
Why do you call yourself a Cash Car Convert?
Yeah, well, it's like this, Jim. I spend a lot of time spending money on cars, and I like cars, and I've bought a lot of cars, and I've done it buying used for the most part, but I almost always did it on credit. And I discovered a book by Dave Ramsey in 2009 called The Total Money Makeover, and it really changed my philosophy about where I was spending my money and how I was spending it. And so that book made me look back at how I had purchased cars, and I realized that I had been doing it the wrong way. And it wasn't as bad for me as it is for some people. A lot of people spend money on new cars, so they take the big depreciation hit. I wasn't getting that, but I still spent a lot more money on cars and on interest than I should have. So I decided at that point, my wife and I, we were going to get out of our unsecured debt and get our cars paid off, and we've been cash car converts ever since, the both of us.
Cool. I want to just kind of communicate to the students who are listening to this. You guys watch the videos every week with Dave Ramsey and Rachel Cruz, and we don't spend as much time on how to buy a car as we do on how to buy real estate. And one thing I regretted last semester was that I didn't spend more time in class teaching you how to buy a used car. And so I made my priority list for this semester to include that. And then I went to Las Vegas and I met my friend James, and he shared part of his story with me, and I'm so excited to share it today with you. Not only that, but we had a little chat earlier when I was out on a walk this morning, and James has a pretty good set of resources that I think are going to work perfectly for our class and for the instruction that we will do to help you prepare to buy your first, second, third, fourth, fifth used car. And one of the things that I know and I've written about is that your transportation budget, that category of your spending plan, it's one of the bigger ones. And so this is an important topic. And if you're one of those students who's bought into the big idea in this semester, the big idea in our personal finance class is to become a millionaire by the time you're 50. And I don't know if you'll be able to do that if you don't pay attention to this category of your spending plan. So James, it is so cool to have you on, and it's an honor to call you a friend.
Thank you, Jim. It's likewise. I've really enjoyed our interactions, and I appreciate what you're teaching these young students and giving them a chance to get off on the right foot. I didn't have that type of education, so I kind of went to the school of hard knocks to learn mine. But going back to what you talked about with Dave Ramsey, that was one of the things that really jumped out at me when I read the book and I started listening to his radio show regularly, is no one in his organization, and I searched the web and I couldn't find anybody else doing it, teaching people who are in debt, who don't have a lot of margin in their life, how to go out and buy that first cash car. And having bought some low-end cars in the past, I know that if you buy them wrong, they're much more of a curse to your family than they are to a blessing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help you much to buy a $2,500 used car if you're going to turn right around and spend $2,500 on it to replace a transmission. So my goal and my mission is to help people learn how to buy better cash cars that'll be a blessing to their family and allow them to get to point A and between point A and point B reliably and confidently.
Well, that is what we're going to talk about for the next 20 or 30 minutes, James. And it's interesting. One of the students, I'll call her Kathy. That wasn't her name, but I'm not sure I have permission to tell her story, so I won't tell her name. But she came to me after class last semester, and she said, Professor Munchbach, I've saved $5,000 and I want to buy a car. My uncle promised to help me pick one, but it's turning out that he doesn't really know how to help me. And so I had mentioned in class that I used to be a master mechanic and now I'm a State Farm insurance agent. And in the process of my life and all of the jobs that I've done, one of my passions has been cars. So she was hoping I could help her. And I did. I helped her a little bit. But I'm hoping that today we can help her and other students and anyone who's listening to this episode who wants to make wise decisions in their car purchases. I'm hoping we can help equip them and empower them to really eliminate one of the areas of debt that most people that I work with as a certified financial planner spend a lot of money on automotive debt. And so your approach and what I think you're going to share, what I know you're going to share with us today is going to empower my students to really take advantage of something that nobody's really teaching them how to take advantage of until now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I first had the idea, I kind of second-guessed myself for that very reason. I couldn't find anybody else out there teaching anything like this, and so I kind of wondered if there was really value in it. But the more I talked to people, the more I heard the horror stories. I had an attorney friend of mine tell me that it's not uncommon for him to see people come in who are getting a divorce and their car payments are more than their mortgage. And so people are just, they put too much of their own ego into their vehicles. And I think people have to learn to check their egos and drive something they can truly afford. And by that, I mean something they can pay cash for.
You know, Dave Ramsey and Rachel Cruz make a statement over and over in our online video content, and they say, I think it goes like this, live like no one else today so that you can live like no one else later. And I think that's how it goes. Have you heard it?
I have, yeah, I think that's right. Yep, if you live like no one else today, then you can live like no one else later. Yeah, absolutely.
And that basically, I mean, that is so true. What we focus on in my class in personal finance so much is the high cost of looking good. And if you can determine that you're going to avoid that one mistake, the high cost of looking good, and figure out what do you really need and what makes sense to achieve your objective, your real objective, in this case, transportation, you can save a lot of money.
That's a really great point. And Dr. Thomas Stanley, who wrote The Millionaire Next Door and a few other books, he's somebody else that I respect and follow a lot, much like Dave Ramsey. And he posted an article in his blog not too terribly long ago that detailed that roughly half of all the Mercedes on the road today are leased. And that goes to tell me that those people really can't afford those vehicles, and so they're leasing them so that they can squeeze every last dollar and drive the most prestigious car that they can. And a friend of mine who's recently become a cash car convert himself used to own a Mercedes, and he told me now whenever he sees those vehicles going down the road, he sees a big bubble behind them trailing with dollar signs in it. And I think that's the right way to do it, because even though I'm a cash car convert and I firmly believe in what I'm doing and I don't put my ego in my vehicle, even I look sometimes and I'll see somebody driving a nice Mercedes or something and I'll be like, wow, that would really be nice. And then I think about the fact that, that person is probably up to their eyeballs in debt. And as Dr. Stanley puts it, he says they're income affluent. They're not balance sheet affluent. So they make enough money to make the payments on nice things. They don't have enough money, as an asset base to really be able to buy and afford those nice things.
That book, The Millionaire Next Door, was, for me, it's the top book on my finance reading material. And I tell my students that. You guys, you've heard me say this over and over. What James is referring to is I didn't even know he had a blog. I'm going to check that out. But he's referring to the author, one of the co-authors of The Millionaire Next Door. We talk about that in class a lot. And so I'm glad to hear that book has influenced your thoughts in terms of your cash car convertness.
Yeah, it's funny. I read that book in the 90s, and I even went through a rough patch in my life where I was driving a Lexus, and I had to continue to drive it for a couple of years beyond where it was really comfortable for me to do so. And when I finally got rid of that car, I bought a little $2,000 Saab that a friend of mine pointed me to that had been owned by a person who was personal friends with a mechanic that had maintained it. And that little car had its quirks and whatever, but I paid $2,000 for it, and I drove it for probably 2 years. And I remember getting behind the wheel of that car, and it was really clean inside and out. The thing that really struck me is, as I sat behind it and I felt the freedom of not having those car payments, I felt a release. I kind of felt smarter driving it. I've tried to struggle for a better word than that, but that's really the one that hit me. And I remember, and I drove that car for several years, but I didn't, learn that lesson well enough at that time. When I got my next vehicle, sure enough, I went in debt for it. So it wasn't, it was another 10 years basically before I found Dave Ramsey's book, and those things kind of hit home with me. And when they did, then I went back and I reread all of Thomas Stanley's books. In fact, I have them on my iPhone, and I periodically will listen to those to keep my mind right, because all of us can fall prey to the comparison trap.
That's a great idea. It's been probably 5 years since I listened, and I have it also in Audible. And I think I might do that again soon. That's a good idea. So let me ask you this, James. If you were going to kind of put a punch list down for a chapter or a section in a book about managing money related to how to buy a used car, and by the way, the title of this episode, I think I'm going to name it The Ultimate Guide to Cash Cars.
I like it.
So help me fill it out. If it was a white paper or, like I said, a chapter or section in a book, how would you open it? What would be the points? What would be the main ideas? And, what would we walk away with if we read that white paper titled Sure. The Ultimate Guide to Cash Cars? Yeah,
I think the first thing is just a reminder that people tend to live and do things by habit. There's another really good book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I would recommend people read that. So people get into habits of doing things. And I think right now a lot of people are in the habit of going to a dealership and trading in their car. And what I want them to do is reshape their mindset and stop doing the research around, truecar.com about, what the right price is for a new car, and start doing their research using tools like Consumer Reports or Edmunds, J.D. Power. Trying to think, Auto Trader even has some really great information out there about used cars. And the reason I say that is because, especially when people are buying that first cash car and it's an inexpensive car, and I kind of target $5,000 and under, I think that most of those people don't realize that you really have to do a lot more research about the car. And so I want them to look at the reliability of the car. And there are a number of reports out there. Auto Trader has one, 6 safe and reliable used cars under $10,000. Consumer Reports has a used cars for every budget, and then they also have a best and worst used car guide. J.D. Powers has most reliable used cars. So all of these websites have access to these used car information, and people, I don't think, tend to use those enough to really start to determine what they want. They just see, here's an older Mercedes and it's $4,500, and I've got that much cash and that'll be great. And they don't look at the reliability or the other piece to this is the TCO. I want them to look at the total cost of ownership and realize that those cars come with higher repair costs. I was talking earlier about the Lexus that I owned. It had an air shock system on it, and the car was new enough at that time that there weren't parts available in a junkyard, so my mechanic could only get them from the Lexus dealership. And when those shocks went out on that air suspension system, and this car obviously was out of warranty, they were $1,000 a pop. So, people don't think about that, but when you're driving a higher end car, oftentimes that's an issue. So if you're driving a truck, the tires are going to cost more. So, not only is it potentially less expensive to buy a small, inexpensive car like a Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla or something, it's also less costly to maintain. So those are the first couple of things that I would tell people to look at. Do your research on the cars for reliability, safety, total cost of ownership, and some of those kinds of things.
I want to just mention my friend, Dr. John Lopez, who I teach with at the Bauer College of Business. John, you were telling me just last week that the air shocks in your Jaguar went out. And, I've always been impressed by you, John, because you always, you pay cash. You paid cash for that Jaguar, and it's a great ride. And it was very inexpensive. And you did I think you made a great deal on it. But James, what I was thinking when John told me his story about his air shocks, being an old master mechanic, I would think that a Jaguar and a Saab and a Mercedes, those are cars that, for my students, I would say to you, you would probably want to not make those the number one car on your list. You're going to have to determine in your research starting out, what is the model of car that has the best statistics in terms of consumer reports and reliability. And here's another thing. If you can take your car to Firestone or Goodyear or Sears or anywhere that they have a general mechanic, if that place will work on the car, then you're probably safe. But if it's a car that requires a lot of dealer only kind of work, when I was a master mechanic, I worked at Sears, and we worked on a lot of different models. But if you came to our shop with a Mercedes or a Saab or a number of other vehicles, we would refer you to the dealer and just say, you really need a specialist to work on that vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that, and you made it more eloquently than I did, but that's exactly what I was trying to say, that you need to get something that you can afford. Don't just look at purchase price, look at the total cost of ownership. And that's a great point on the mechanic. I've had a mechanic that I've used myself for a number of years now, so I don't even think about how to find a good mechanic. But I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. And I know Edmunds.com has an article out there that deals with exactly that subject. So that's a really great point.
It turned out that my friend John, Professor Lopez, he's a really smart guy. And so he did the research himself, and he has a mechanic who can work on his Jaguar. So that's another thing I would say. It kind of depends. Having a relationship with someone you trust who's qualified to work on the vehicle that you're driving, that's almost like the total cost of ownership when I'm counseling with a client as a certified financial planner or even just as a State Farm agent. I suggest that, think about the car you want, but do some research. Part of the research is always to check to see how much the insurance is going to cost for that vehicle.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so that's all part of that big picture, but it all really falls into your transportation category of your spending plan or your budget. And so these are all parts of the pieces of the puzzle for, how to have that lifelong savings instead of paying interest on debt, buying a car with cash, but knowing some of these things are really helpful on the front end. So I'll shut up and let you keep going, James.
Well, I'm gonna divert here for just a minute. You reminded me that I was reading something just recently, an article, and it talked about the average American, and it was talking about the fact that the average American has student loan debt of about $32,000, and they have auto debt of about $31,000. And so I keep hearing about how much of an issue student loan debt is, and I want to make the point that I think auto loan debt is the number one debt issue out there, even above student loans. And the reason for that is that while the average person has more student loan debt than they do auto debt, that student loan debt is going to be paid off in a relatively short period of time, maybe 10 years or something. That auto debt is going to be reoccurring, and autos continue to go up in price. So since 2009, new cars have gone up 11%, while median income has fallen about 9%. So we continue to see that trend, and more people are getting in trouble with auto debt as they extend the length of the loans that they use so that they can keep their payments at a level at which they can make them. So I just wanted to make that point.
That's a great point, and it really is a kind of a supporting point to the first thing you said. Number one, we get in a habit of thinking, and your goal is, in this episode, we want to help reshape the way whoever you are listening to this, if you're a student, a business owner, independent contractor, freelancer, or maybe you're a CEO of a company, it doesn't matter. The way you think about this one topic, if you're pre-programmed to think that the new car is always going to be part of your budget, you can do that, but it is going to cost you over your life a lot of money, and you don't have to think that way. There is another way, and I would submit it's a better way.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and I'm definitely going down that path myself. My wife and I both drive cash cars, but let me get back to the topic you were asking me about. So the first thing is I tell people to do their research, determine what model it is that they're interested in, make sure they can afford not only the price of the car but also the TCO on that car. Definitely I want them to pay cash. I don't want them going into debt for any automobile. The definition of whether you can afford something or not in this case I'm saying is whether you can pay cash for it. So look to buy something with cash, buy used, and then the really interesting thing here is for cars under $5,000, I'm going to recommend that you don't buy from anybody but an individual. And the reason for that is, and Jim, I hope you'll appreciate this as a mechanic. I want to buy almost like a poker player. I want to buy from the person. So when I do a lot of things to qualify a car over the phone before I ever go to see it, and I ask questions of the individual about why they're selling, and try to feel out, okay, are they a dealer flipping a car? Not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but I'm looking to buy from somebody who's the original owner, maybe the second owner of a car, because they're going to have oftentimes the records for the vehicle, and I'm looking for in that initial conversation a pride of ownership, because you can pick that up from people. And so I'm asking people really to be a little bit more of a noticer about the things when they're checking out these cars. So once they get to the point where they've qualified it over the phone, and again, there's some questions on my website that I go through how to qualify a car over the phone, but it's mostly around finding out if it's been in an accident, right? And you can check some of these things on Carfax, but you also want to find out, is this person being honest with you? And so ask about condition of tires, and do they match, and the brands match, and all those kinds of things. I think all those little details matter, because if you can find somebody who's maintained a car around the little things, then you can generally trust them about the big things. And so I try to ferret that out over the phone call. Then once I'm ready to go visit, I want to go to the house where the car is located.
Can I interrupt for just
absolutely.
a second? Because you covered a lot of ground there, James. And one thing I want to do right quick is let's mention your website so that listeners know right where to go and click on.
Yeah, cashcarconvert.com.
Oh, cool. So it's just like your Twitter at cashcarconvert.
Yep, absolutely. I try to keep it simple.
That's good. I wish I could keep things that simple. So let me just mention, you said original owner or second owner. You mentioned a few things, but those I bet I've bought 100 cars in my life, never a new one.
Yep.
And always at the top of my list is I'm looking for, when you go to Craigslist or excuse me, Auto Trader, wherever you shop for a vehicle, that's what I'm looking for in the comments. One owner.
Right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. In fact, when I search on Auto Trader or Craigslist, I use the extra search criteria locations to put in one owner. Sometimes I'll put in low miles, things like that to try to pull up vehicles. And I think your students will be surprised if they go out there, because everybody's got a picture in their mind of what a $5,000 car looks like. And, if these students have only, driven in nice new cars, they'll be surprised at what you can buy for $5,000. Now, for sure, you have to be careful, and there's a lot out there that you have to be wary of. But if you do the research, you do your due diligence in your phone calls, and when you go out to view the vehicle, that can make a huge difference for you.
You also mentioned little details, and I don't know if this is a good time for me to just run down my mental list. If I went as a master mechanic who's bought a lot of cars and fixed a lot of cars, I have this kind of mental list that I guess I take for granted that you would see the same things I would see if I went and opened the hood and kicked the tires and took it for a test drive. But the reality is I'm going to see things that very few people are going to see who have not yet, spent years and years making a living as a master mechanic.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And the thing is, as a lay person, because I've never worked in the auto industry, I've never been a mechanic, I can do small things like I can change the brakes, I can change the oil, I've put shocks on a car before, but rebuilding an engine or a transmission or something is beyond my capabilities. I wouldn't even want to take something like that on. So I think I tried to, and again, there's some resources on my site around this, but I try to take people through and before I get to that, let me back up and go to the beginning of when you drive up to look at a car in person. I want you to look at the house. Are the bushes trimmed? Is the yard maintained? Because if the weeds are overgrown in the yard and the bushes aren't maintained and the house needs painting, I don't care how clean and neat the car is sitting in the driveway, it looked like that a week before. So I want people to look at details beyond the car as part of their criteria when they're looking at the car, because I don't think people vary too much between the way they treat their vehicles and the way they treat the rest of their life.
Boy, that's brilliant. And my wife, Connie, babe, if you're listening, I know you agree with what James just said. I haven't ever really done that intentionally, but man, it makes absolute perfect sense.
Yeah, it's been a real lifesaver for me. And I've had it, just be true over and over again that you pull up and the house, looks run down and whatever, and you go to look at the car and sure enough, it looks, pretty much just like that. So that's the first thing. So then once you get to where you're ready to look at the car, I want to walk around the car and just give it a once over. Again, I like little things like making sure tires match, and, if they're a quality brand, then that's good. Good news in my book. And I don't really define that for people. But some of the major brands I like are, Goodyear and Michelin, but there's a lot of good ones out there. But I'm really looking for good tread on the tires, good name brand, and looking for a clean body, all the seams aligned, there's not a big gap on one side indicating maybe there was an accident or something. I go through and I look at the doors and the hood and the rear trunk lid and all the components of the car, and check the vehicle identification number, which is tagged on all those, to make sure that they match. And again, I'm trying to make sure that this car hasn't been in some kind of an accident that maybe was unreported, not picked up by Carfax or something like that. So I'm doing a little bit more due diligence there. So I do that first cursory scan. Then I go to the interior. I'm looking for any rips or tears in the seats. I find some particular models, the headliners tend to become loose and start to drape down, and so I'm checking for things like that. I want to check the radio, the speakers, make sure that that they're all working, that they're not blown out, gauges, lights, all those kinds of things. Because Jim, as a mechanic, I don't know what you think about this, but I find as a lay person, electrical problems are one of the things that can really plague me, because I don't really know how to track those down, and I feel really exposed if I'm not taking this vehicle to a mechanic I really trust.
Yeah, and one thing I'd say right now, if you're in this stage of the inspection on this used car, is if you see, for instance, an aftermarket radio and a few, speakers kind of put in the door, and you can actually see that they were installed maybe by Junior, or maybe the owner of the car got brave one day and his Saturday project was to do something like that. That may not necessarily be a huge red flag, but it's probably a huge red flag.
Yeah, Jim, it's funny you say that, because I don't even like aftermarket radios in the vehicles I buy. And I know that oftentimes they're an upgrade from what was actually in the vehicle. But to me, it hurts the resale. And, unless I really feel good about the way that the aftermarket radio was installed, that would be enough for me not to buy a car. I'll make a statement here that my own experience is that you find the deal of a lifetime in cars every 2 to 3 weeks. If you're really diligent and you look, there are good deals out there. And so I never feel compelled to buy a car. And I can say it this way: I've hardly ever walked away from a deal and regretted it, but I've certainly made some deals that I regretted.
Yeah, I think rule 1, you should practice this 10 times before you buy a car. Walk away. Because and you're going to see, the everything you've said so far gives you an opportunity to walk away. You're not looking for, you're looking for the perfect deal, and there's a lot of things that are going to indicate this is not the best car. And you may think you're never going to find that car, but I promise you, I've bought a lot of the perfect cars. And the price was right. It was a single owner. It was somewhere. Usually it's like this. So why are you selling the car? Oh, my wife, she got this new one and she really likes it. And the dealer didn't offer us anything for a trade-in. So we thought we'd save it, just sell it. We were going to give it away, but they were just selling it. So, it's those kind of deals where it's people, they don't need the money. They're not desperate to sell it. And they'll make a good deal with you usually.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's one of the reasons that I like to buy from individuals. It's not that I want to take advantage of them or anything like that, but when you go to a car dealership, those people are professionals at negotiating deals. And not only are they professionals about it, they're in the business to make money. The person that's selling this car, they could have any of a number of reasons for selling, and it may not, the money may not matter to them nearly as much. And even all other things being equal, dealers tend to get more for vehicles than individuals do. So just going through a private seller, you're automatically going to be able to get more car for your money than if you're buying at a dealership. Yeah.
So on your inspection, James, did you finish the interior and now are you ready to go under the hood?
Yeah, just about. I was trying to think if there was anything else there. For the inspection where the car is just sitting, that's pretty much it. And then, I check all the electronics, right? Because I want to make sure the moonroof works and all those sorts of things. And then
that's smart. So you actually push the buttons and make sure the thing works.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Because I've been there where it didn't.
Including the mirrors, if they're electric, the seats, yes. Everything that's got a button, you check it.
Absolutely. And it's just worth so much to do that because, once you've bought that car and you've got it home and you figure out that there's some little thing that's not working. And again, especially if you're, in a position where you don't have a lot of margin in your life and you're trying to pay down debt, or if you're a young person who just doesn't have a lot of extra income, you don't want to be spending $300 on a little electrical item or being really disappointed with the purchase you just made because you didn't do the inspection properly.
Beautiful.
So
that's great advice. If it's got a button, check it.
Absolutely. So once I get under the hood, again, I want to look at more than just what's there. So I would actually like to see the engine have just a little coating of dust on it, like it had been clean, they kept it clean, but they didn't clean it just to sell it, because then I'm a little concerned that maybe they're trying to hide that there's a leak or something. That doesn't mean that there is, but I like to just if there's a fine coating of dust, like the car, the engine maybe hasn't been cleaned in a little while, then I know, okay, if there were any leaks here, I would be able to see them for the most part, right? The ones that are visible from that angle. Obviously, I don't crawl underneath the car to look. I will certainly check the driveway to see if there's any fluid challenges there. But
those are, by the way, as a master mechanic, those are the critical things you're looking for. You're looking to see everything. The beautifully cleaned, detailed engine is not something you really want to see. Although, boy, dealers and smart salespeople, that's the first thing they do. They clean up any previous evidence of a mechanical problem, and they clean it and shine it so that you can't see it.
Exactly right. Yep. So I'm looking for that, and then I'm checking the fluids. So I'm going to check to make sure that they're at the right level. You know, I want to see if they're clean or if they're dirty. Obviously I'm looking for clean fluids in the vehicle. Like I said, I check for any leaks underneath, and I'm checking all those, right? The oil, the transmission fluid, the brake fluid, power steering, the radiator, the windshield cleaning area. So
and most people, like, if you're me, you're smelling that stuff, you're tasting it, you're looking at it, you're putting it on your fingers, you're analyzing it, and there's a lot of things you can determine. But most folks, and I'm assuming everyone who's listening, that you have no clue why you would smell any of these fluids or even check them. But I would at least say that when you check the oil, if it is black as coal, that's not a great sign. It's not going to be golden like on the commercials when you see, the oil advertisements. But if it's black like coal, that's kind of an indicator. And I would ask, how often do you change the oil? When was the last time you changed the oil? And if the person tells you, man, it is really due for an oil change, at least they're telling you the truth. But that's about all you know. That's
a red flag for sure. And that's the other thing that I like dealing with individuals on, because I'm looking for that individual who's got a stack of paperwork, right? And they can't wait to show it to me because they want to tell me how well they maintained this car. I've seen it so many times, and it's, maybe some of the people out there listening are thinking, well, that never happens, but I'm telling you, it does. I've had it happen many times, and, I do a lot of work pre-screening before I ever go out to look also. And again, not every car I've ever purchased has been this way, and I've taken some risks at times when I thought I had found a good vehicle and they didn't have those kinds of things. But boy, I sure feel better when they can pull out a stack of receipts and I can check and see what was done on the vehicle, in the past. So
yeah, a couple things I want to mention from a mechanical perspective that maybe you folks don't think about when you inspect a car that you're thinking about buying. But when you look at all the rubber components, hoses and belts in particular, every hose, every belt, you can see that it kind of tells a story about the vehicle. If you're looking at a vehicle with 70,000 miles and it's still got the original belts and hoses, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you're looking to see, is it maintained? And then also another thing I would suggest you look for is, just like when you look at the radio on the interior, has it been replaced, and did somebody who may not have really known what they were doing replace it? That's what you're looking for under the hood as well. Any components that you can tell have been replaced were probably not replaced by a specialist or a master mechanic who knew what he was doing. If I replace your air conditioner or any component on your engine, and you can look at it and tell that I replaced it, unless it's just shiny, brand new, and that's the only way you can tell. If there are things out of place, or it looks like everything else is one color, but this is, mixed and matched pieces and parts, that's a big red flag. And so those things may not jump right out at you initially when you inspect under the hood, but do be looking for those. Look for things that are out of place, that look like they've been kind of, what's the word? We used to say rigged.
Yes.
So you're looking for things that have been rigged.
Yeah. There was a point I need to go back to when I was talking about walking around the outside of the vehicle and checking out the tires and all those kinds of things. The other thing I also like to do at that point is look at the wheels and or hubcaps that are on the vehicle and make sure that they're intact and not too beat up or anything. But the other piece there is if you can see the brake rotors through the wheels, then I want to look for a nice shiny smooth brake rotor. I don't want to see a bunch of grooves dug into it and everything, right?
And it doesn't mean it's shiny like clean metal. It just means it's smooth.
Yes. Yes.
Perfectly smooth. If there are any grooves in it, then walk away. Any of these things, by the way, if you see something that we're saying you don't want to see this, it's a deal breaker. Walk away. There's a better opportunity down the road. These are all significant enough to walk away.
Right. And again, you might think any one of them individually is a small thing, but the fact is those are just the things you found. You don't know what things this person did or didn't do to the vehicle that you don't find. So
exactly.
Right. So the other thing I like to do, Jim, then is I go around and I also look at the trunk or the hatch if it's an SUV or something, and I want to look in the back there and I want to see how clean and neat that is, how well maintained is it. One of the things that just absolutely drives me crazy is if there's parts missing, like not all the pieces of the jack are there, or the tire isn't inflated or something, and it's just such a minor thing to keep up with that sort of thing. But if I'm buying from a person who can't even keep up with that sort of thing, then I know that's a car I'm not really interested in buying.
Absolutely.
So I look at that, and then this next thing is better if you have somebody with you to do. But if not, you can get the person who is selling the car to help you with this. And that is, you want to start the car. And you want to look at the exhaust that's coming out of it, because the exhaust that's coming out is going to tell you a story. And Jim, I know you know more about this than I do, but I know if it's black, it's burning gasoline. I know if it's kind of bluish, it's burning oil. And I know if it's white, then it's letting water get in past the head gasket. So
yeah, that's a great summary too. You've got black, blue, and white, and that's extra gas comes out black. Oil that's escaping through rings and whatnot in the engine that are just worn out, that turns blue in the exhaust. And anything that leaks any moisture into the combustion chamber, like a head gasket could be just barely leaking, any of that, any moisture in the combustion chamber comes out like white steam in the back. And so those are all clearly walk away indicators.
Yeah. And I didn't mention it, but when I'm in the interior, I'm also going to start the engine and I'm going to listen to it and see if it idles well. Does it start smooth? If I press the accelerator, is there hesitation? Does it, rev smoothly? Those kinds of things. Before I ever get it out on the road to test drive it, I'm going to see how it idles and that sort of thing. So I kind of left that step out.
Yeah,
that's something
idling is critical too. As a mechanic, doesn't matter what year the vehicle is, a steady idle, not too fast, not too slow, so it's shaking and trying to die. If it doesn't idle, walk away.
Yep, absolutely. So once I've gotten all my inspections done on site, then, and again, I'm looking across the street of my house at an SUV out there. So if there's an SUV with a roof rack, I'm going to be checking that out as well. Just, if it's a truck, I'm going to be checking out the bed. So whatever type of vehicle I'm looking at, I may do some things differently based on that. In fact, one of the things I like to look at is windshield wipers, because they're easy to change out. And if somebody's let the windshield wipers go, that's not a deal breaker for me necessarily, but it's a real indicator that, they weren't really on top of things.
Yeah. Another thing I think of is if it's got a towing package, that could be really cool. But if they've used that towing package like day in and day out,
yeah,
then that's an indicator. And, it doesn't mean it's a worn out vehicle, but it's really cool when you see it's got manufactured towing package and it's never been used.
Yes. I've had a couple of vehicles that were exactly that way, and yeah, it was nice to have it as an option, but even I never used it, so it was fine for me.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm really ready to go out and give the car a test drive, and just one thing I'm going to tell people is, it's really nice to listen to the radio, and it's great to hear it, and you do want to test the radio, but I don't recommend doing that when you're test driving, because
absolutely,
I want to hear everything that's going on in that vehicle. I hate hearing rattles in vehicles, and so it really drives me crazy. So I'm listening for any kind of a noise that's going to tell me there might be a problem. And again, depending on what it is, and especially since I'm not a mechanic, it may not exclude a vehicle from my selection. but it's something that I'm going to flag to my mechanic when I have them look at it and inspect it before I actually buy the car. So I'm trying to make notes to myself of what else is going on. Also, if there's something that I wanted to take a closer look at that maybe I wasn't comfortable looking at with the owner there, then I may pop the hood and look at something else or something along those lines when I'm doing the test drive. But I'm going to check the acceleration. I want to make sure the transmission doesn't slip. And for those of you who maybe don't know how that works, you'll be in a gear and the engine will kind of rev, and then you'll have like a jump or a click, and the transmission will shift, and it'll be kind of a hard shift, but it'll rev high before it does that. I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining that, Jim.
Let me take a shot at it.
Okay, go ahead.
Because this is critical. So when you get in this vehicle to take it for a test drive, I want you to have in mind you're going to test drive it not just in one mode. You're going to test drive it in, let's say, 3. Let me see if I can figure out 3. The first one is just going to be stop and go traffic in the neighborhood. The next one is going to be interstate. You're going to take that car and get it up to the speed limit on interstate. So those are 2 different scenarios, and I'll think of another one in a minute. But here, let's go through your neighborhood test drive first, because here's what you're looking for. James said it. You're looking for noises, and you're looking for how does the transmission shift. Now, another thing, James, you said acceleration, and this is so important. So everything you do when you test drive, you're going to be paying attention to how does this vehicle accelerate. And let me unpack that just a little bit. When you take off in a residential area, you can't go over 25 miles an hour, but you can stop and go from 0 to 25 at least 5 times. That's what I want you to do when you test drive your vehicle. So you take off very slowly the first time, and you're listening for any noises. The radio's off. If the dude keeps chattering at you, tell him, please be quiet. I want to listen to this engine. And then accelerate slowly and listen. And you're just listening for anything you hear. You don't have to be a master mechanic to know that you're hearing something, and that something is telling you something. So you just accelerate slowly and feel the acceleration in the vehicle. If it shifts in a way that you really can't notice anything, you're good to go. But if it shifts in a way that's like, whoa, man, it just like bumped when it went into second gear, unless it's a performance vehicle, a race car, it shouldn't be doing that. It should be a smooth acceleration. So you do that 5 times. The first time you do it very slowly. The reason you're doing it slowly is because if there's a problem in the engine or the transmission, when you accelerate slowly, you're going to feel it more. If the engine bogs on a slow acceleration, you're likely to feel it, but you may not. So now you try accelerating a little bit more normally. And then on your last 1 or 2, you're going to accelerate more rapidly as if you're in a hurry. In fact, you may not want to do this in a residential area. You may need to get to here's the third scenario, a business street where you're at a red light and you take off faster than the guy beside you. The reason you're doing that is because you need to know if this vehicle has something defective in its engine or in its ignition or its computer system. You're only going to know under certain operating conditions, and one of them is the vehicle's warmed up to its proper operating temperature, and you're accelerating now, and you're accelerating as if you need to beat the car next to you. If there's a problem, it's going to show up at that point. And then if it doesn't, if everything's smooth and you haven't walked away yet, take the vehicle out on the interstate, get it up to speed limit, and don't be shy about getting on the interstate and getting it up to speed. Push the engine and watch for smoke, listen for noises, feel the acceleration. And if everything's good, then you can be confident that you've put this vehicle through the kind of test drive that you need to put it through in order to know that you've got a vehicle that you don't need to go walk away from.
Absolutely. That's really great, Jim. I love the way you broke that down, because I mentally do a lot of those things. I don't know if I do the 5 stops and starts in the residential area, but I will from now on. But I definitely have tested it in those multiples of environments. And one of the things I'm going to tell your students is that I do so much research and search for vehicles when I'm looking for one. And by the way, I enjoy that. To me, it's kind of a challenge. It's almost like a detective thing, right? I really enjoy the chase. But by the time I actually go out to look at a vehicle, I feel really good about the one I'm going out to look at. It's rare that I have to look at too many vehicles in person because I do so much homework on the front end that by the time I actually find the vehicle, it's almost a done deal by the time I find it. Now, I've certainly gone and, been surprised. In fact, one of the questions I like to ask people over the phone that I didn't mention earlier is, is there anything in the photos that doesn't show up, but's there? Because I've seen, there'd be dents in vehicles that don't show up in the photos. And it wasn't that the person was trying to hide them, they just don't show up. Same thing with tears or rips. So I'll ask about some of those disqualifiers, and again, they're not always disqualifiers. I mean, it's always it depends kinds of a thing. But I ask about those things on the phone, so I don't have to drive out there, and I'll do a pretty broad search. So sometimes I'll tell somebody like, look, I'm not going to buy this car if it's not, in as good a shape as it looks in the photos, and I'm going to be driving 50 miles to get there or whatever. So, I'd really appreciate you telling me, how this thing really is, right? And
yeah. Boy, that's so important too, James, to know that if you're able to talk to the owner, you can feel a lot more comfortable than if you're talking to a dealer who's like trying to sell you something and they really don't have a clue about this vehicle.
Right. Absolutely right. Yeah, I really love, again, looking in the eyes of the person who's owned the car, who's got the records and has, like I said, been a one or two owner car. It just gives me a lot better feeling that they know the vehicle. When you go to a used car dealer, and I don't care if it's a really nice one or one of the low end selling these $5,000 cars and less, the people who are selling them, they may or may not know the history, but you're certainly not going to know for sure. You're just going to have to really roll the dice, really rely on your own eyes and ears and your mechanic to check it out. And again, if you're talking under 5,000, I say strictly deal with individuals. You don't have the margin to pay the extra price that a dealer needs to get to make money on the vehicle. And again, I've got nothing against dealers. They're performing a service, and people need to buy cars from them sometimes, and that's great. But I'm going to say for those 5,000 and under, deal strictly with individuals. If you're dealing 5 to 10, then I think it's okay. There's some good used cars you can find at the lots. And I guess I should preface this by saying the kind of lots I like to go to buy my used cars are the lots that have new car dealerships on them. And the reason for that is I think that they get the best trade-ins. And as a new car dealer, they have that, new car logo out there. They've got a brand that they have to protect. And I don't think that they're going to bring in a car and put it on their used car lot if they don't feel like it's a good car. It's too easy for them to wholesale it to another dealer. It's too easy for them to put it off to auction. They don't have a reason to put their reputation on the line by putting a vehicle out there that's not good enough for them to sell. And what I find is in that $5,000 to $10,000 range, oftentimes they'll put just a few of them out there to bring people in. And so if you're really watching and you have the cash to buy a car for $5,000 to $10,000, you can find a good car at a used car lot at a new car dealership. But again, once you do that, you're foregoing the opportunity to look the owner in the eyes and to get the paperwork and some of those kinds of things. So, even from that 5 to 10 range, I would probably really still try to buy from an individual. Again, you're not paying the dealer markup if you do it that way. And then once you get over $10,000, I think you can, most of the cars you can buy in that range are going to be a better quality of vehicle. There's less risk associated with those purchases, I would say, in general. Not to say they're risk-free. You need to do your due diligence, but you're a little safer, and so you can, maybe go without having to see the paperwork and so forth, because maybe there's lower miles and some of those kinds of things. But, no matter which of those you're talking about, I'm saying you should pay cash. And, my wife and I currently drive cars. They're not terribly expensive, but we paid cash for them. My truck was a little under $14,000. Her car was right at $12,000. They both have over 100,000 miles on them. And, we're just as happy as we could be with them. And, we're not embarrassed to drive them. One's a 2007 Toyota hybrid. and my truck is a 2006 F-150 Lariat edition. So we're very happy with those vehicles. They do a great job for us, and and I used those same techniques when I was buying my truck. My wife's car we actually got through family, so that's a bit of a different scenario. But yeah, I've definitely used these techniques to buy many cars.
Well, James, I want to tell you thank you. I know you have an appointment with our friend Cliff Ravenscraft, so we need to wrap it up pretty quick here. But you just mentioned what I consider to be the million-mile myth, and it is a myth because vehicles are created today, designed today to go way over 100,000 miles, but there's still a lot of people out there that want to get rid of their vehicle when it gets close to 100,000 miles, and that opens an incredible opportunity for buyers.
It's so right. In fact, I had a gentleman who reached out to me at the end of December, and he said, "Look, I've got a 2006 VW Passat, and I dearly love this car." And he said, "But it's coming up on 100,000 miles. I think it's going to start costing me some money, so I think I want to buy a car that's got a 10-year warranty and 10-year 100,000-mile warranty. What do you think?" So he didn't give me much more detail than that, so I used kind of average figures. So I responded to him and said, "Listen, the average new car, according to Edmunds, sells for right at about $31,000. And that new car is going to lose about $7,600 in depreciation in year one. And the average car payment is about $464 a month right now in the U.S. So if you put that, calculate that for the first year, now you're at $5,600 there. So that new car is going to cost him $13,000 the first year, and now he's not going to realize that loss on the depreciation until he actually sells the car. But with the median income in the U.S. being right at $52,000, that's a big hit to somebody who's making $52,000 a year to lose $7,000 in value on their vehicle. And I think that's kind of that hidden charge that nobody really looks at. And it was all because his car was approaching 100,000 miles.
Wow.
So
that's a huge opportunity. And for you students who are listening who have bought into the idea that you can be a millionaire by the time you're 50, these are the tools. These are the principles that make that happen. So, James, this has been, I think, just an incredibly helpful. It's been 45 minutes we've been talking.
Yeah.
This is just going to be one of the most helpful extra credit assignments I have for my students of personal finance and anyone else who's listening to this episode.
Well, I thank you for having me on. And the funny thing is, and I think you'll probably feel this way too, is we really sort of just barely scratched the surface of all the things that are out there. So I would encourage people to, go to these resources that I know Jim's going to share with you. There's so much good information out there. Just take the time to do that research, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and on the web doing this research. There's just so much information out there, and as we started this call off, forewarned is forearmed. If you can do your research, you won't be going out blind. I didn't touch on this, but sorry, Jim, I just want to say this real quick. On Consumer Reports, for instance, there is, you can go out and you can look at specific models of vehicles. And when you look at those, you can see where their problem areas are. And so when you're going out to inspect a vehicle, you can know to look for that vehicle at that specific issue. Maybe it's brakes, maybe it's electronics, maybe it's the transmission. But you know because you've done the research that, hey, that's a problem area for this kind of car, so I need to be aware and give that extra scrutiny. Sorry, Jim, I just want to get
that's great. And you're right. We've only scratched the surface, but I think we've put a good scratch in the surface. And we've given you, if you're listening to this or you want to share this with somebody who's about to buy a used car, we've given you plenty of reasons to walk away and help you identify the one beautiful deal that's going to be a great ride for you for $5,000 or less. Or if you're in the upper ranges, what you learned on this episode can help you too. So thank you very much, James. You can reach James at CashCarConvert or CashCarConvert.com. And you want to say something about your podcast, James?
Yeah, I have a podcast out there in iTunes and Stitcher. It's the Cash Car Convert podcast. and you can search that under my name, or you can search Cash Car Convert, 3 words, in iTunes, and it'll come up. I'd love for you to give it a listen. I have 2 things that I do there. I try to give some information like I've given in this episode with Jim, but I also bring on people who are inspirational. They might have been where you are, but they made some decisions and now they're living their dream. They've decided that they're going to invest in themselves, not things. And so I'm trying to both educate and inspire on that podcast. So I'd love to have you come out and give it a listen.
Well, cool. And I want you to listen too, because you're listening to the Cash Car Convert podcast with my friend, James Kinson. James, you the man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And you can copy that and put it on your show if you play this episode.
I will do that.
Cool. Hey, take care and say hi to Cliff for me.
I will do. Thank you so much, Jim. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
All right.
See you later.
Bye-bye. All right, welcome back. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jim Munchbach. As you can tell, Jim is an authority when it comes to the mechanics on a car, and he was able to add some depth to some of the things that I talk about doing as it relates to inspections. So I think that was a really great episode, and I think I'm going to invite Jim to be on my show to talk about how to help you find a good mechanic that you can trust. So expect to hear him back on the show if I can find a way to bribe him on. With that, you can find all the information on this episode on the show notes at cashcarconvert.com/018. Again, that's cashcarconvert.com/018. If you'd like to reach out and communicate with me, you can do that on Twitter. That's at cashcarconvert. Again, that's at cashcarconvert. This is James Kinson, the Cash Car Convert, telling you to buy a cash car and kick auto debt to the curb. Thank you for listening.